Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along tonight. We were a bit nervous planning this, given that it was an August event, but the amount of people that we've got in the room tonight is absolutely fantastic. And there's a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces here as well. Just before we kick things off, could I get a show of hands who has not been to a Startup Grind event, just to sort of set the scene? That's fantastic. Yeah, really well, welcome. And we'll give you a bit more info into Startup Grind, what we're about, and what you'll get out of tonight's event. So Startup Grind is the world's largest community of entrepreneurs. So we operate across 162 cities globally. Let me get this other point. So every chapter, in the UK, I think we've got 30 or so chapters. So if you're ever in Manchester, Liverpool, anywhere else around the UK, you can access all of our events online. And if you're on holiday and you're inclined to go to startup networking events while abroad, yeah, you're more than welcome to do that too. And everyone's very welcoming. And yeah, I'll skip that one. So what is the startup community all about? So one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is that we aim for people to focus on giving first. So rather than coming to the events and thinking, what can I get out of the event? We want you to focus on how can you actually help your fellow founders and people within the startup ecosystem thrive, essentially. So we'll always ask if there's an introduction that you can make or a way to educate or connect people. Do please lead with that before thinking about what can you take from it. And I think those that are regulars would really attest to that becoming part of, or that is part of our actual community. So we've got a number of our team tonight. Prem and James can't be with us, unfortunately, but Sam, I think Sam's at the back alongside, hey, Sam, and Gabriel as well. So if you've got any questions and would like to come along to our next events, do just reach out to any of the team. Oddly, I'm in an odd situation tonight. So I'm part of the Startup Grind team, but I also work for Howard Kennedy. So it was quite a handy commute. Which was nice. We should do events here a bit more often. So the agenda for this evening, we're going to keep the talking as limited as possible. Get straight into a VC panel to sort of really get under the skin of what's happening in the VC world and trying to find out, how can founders get that coveted check. Followed by a Q&A, so do please engage and don't be afraid to ask anything. You've got 4 experts on stage, and I'm sure they'd happily oblige to answer any of your questions. And then, given that it's a Startup Grind summer party, we're going to head across the road at 8:45, 9ish, to the Barrow Boy and Banker pub, if anyone is keen to carry the networking on. Hopefully it won't be as bad as the last one, where I think there was a group of 20 of us out at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. That was regrettable. So I would just like to introduce, so at our last event, we had a pitch to media event, and Josephine was one of the amazing founders. We met out at Startup Grind San Francisco back in April, and Josephine has an amazing networking app that helps you, it uses augmented reality to help you network. So I'll get Josephine to say a few words. We can have a round of applause for Josephine, that'd be great.
You said everything already. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. So my name is Josephine. I'm French and British. I swear, because it's not always obvious. And I built an app called Aura that really the idea is to tell you who is who around you using augmented reality. So we just launched. You can download the app on iOS only for now. I'm sorry for all the Android users, but we'll get there. And little by little, we'll grow. The idea is really to get the network effect by helping events. So we're building the app to help events. So by default, everyone would have been on the app tonight. But please, if you want to test it and try it, we're on it. Mathieu is on it. A lot of people are on it. And so you can really look at what it looks like and the experience. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Thanks, Josephine. I would really encourage everyone to help out. So Josephine's applying for Y Combinator currently, and this is going to be a bit of a pilot run. So if we can boost those numbers and give her a better chance of, making that position in the accelerator, that'd be amazing. So yeah, thanks, Josephine. And we just need to give a round of thanks to our sponsors. On screen, AirWallex, Howard Kennedy, and Montpac. And our partners, you'll see there, Supreme Factory, Runway East, and Meetup Video. AirWallex couldn't be here tonight, unfortunately, so I will just take you through. They're a unicorn, super fast scaling, amazing business that's headquartered out in Singapore, but they're based globally. And essentially what they do is they help scale-ups deal with, essentially scale internationally using their payments platform. So if you work in if your startup essentially takes payments or makes payments internationally using FX, their platform can streamline everything, and they've got an amazing API as well that can help sort of integrate with your own startup. We then have Howard Kennedy. I'll be quiet for a second and introduce Alex, who helps me run the Ignite program. So Alex, welcome you up on stage.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. I'm not going to talk very long. I'm one of the partners here at Howard Kennedy, so welcome to Howard Kennedy. I'll talk to you a little bit about Ignite. I know a few of you know about Ignite. Ignite is the startup program that we run here at Howard Kennedy. Gives us an opportunity to work with you all and just generally more interesting businesses that are starting up. We founded it relatively recently, within the last 18 months, partly because, well, this firm's always been an entrepreneurial firm working for entrepreneurs. But we realized that you've got quite large American firms and British firms that charge enormous amounts of fees. They're billing themselves out as being startup law firms. It doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. So we realized we needed to brand it a little bit and tell people what we were doing. So hence Ignite. Essentially, it is just an opportunity to work with us at a massively discounted rate, up to 30% off the fees, which is basically a lot of the profit, with a view to building the relationship with you guys. Also, we found that lots of people these days tend to start in a WeWork or shared working space, and you don't want to have the meeting with your bank there or with your founders and the investors there. So we offer our offices here for you guys to use. If you're on the program, you can come in, see subject to availability, terms apply, etc. And it just provides you with a different level of ability to present. The other big thing, and being in the startup world is all about this, is networks. And one of the things that lawyers are quite good at doing is networking and introducing their clients to other clients. In this case, we're quite good at introducing our clients to other networks. So Startup Grind is a fantastic network, I think the largest in the world. But also we work with Vicasso and we work with Kaiku and a variety of other networks. So on the program, you will be introduced to these networks. I should also add with a shout out to Endex, which was our first Ignite client we ever had, who has subsequently gone to raise lots of money and build the product that they were looking to build, be very successful. So without further ado, I shall pass you back to Matt, who's wearing a different hat now.
Yeah, I'm back to wearing my startup Grind hat. If anyone's looking for any of the team, if our team could put your hands up just so that you can be identified. If anyone's got any burning legal questions, just drop one of these guys and girls a message. So our final sponsor is Montpac. Montpac says on the screen, outsource financing and accounting for startups. They're offering a really good, they're a global business, I think they're headquartered in America, and they're doing really good stuff across the entrepreneur space. They've offered Startup Grind discount on all of our on all of their fees, I should say. So if anyone wants to reach out, just drop Anthony an email and you can get his details after the event. So without further ado, I think we'll welcome up our panel on the stage, which is set to be a real interesting evening. We've got our partner, Marc. Pass this over to you, Marc.
Thank you very much. So, as Alex mentioned in his talk about Howard Kennedy, one of the things that we pride ourselves on and one of the things we like to do, and to be honest, one of the more enjoyable parts of our job is trying to put clients together with different clients. So we've put together a panel tonight of 3 individuals from VC investment houses. So these guys represent Fuel Ventures, Guinness Global Investors, and Praetura Investors. So these are guys that we have helped to launch VCTs over the last 2 years. And between them, we've raised or helped raise around about £19 million for investment in smaller companies. So without further ado, I'll let them introduce themselves and give you a little bit more background about their organisations. So starting with Oli.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Oli. I'm a partner at Fuel Ventures. My job is to write seed tickets, £1 to £2 million, into generally companies. All of my companies will be sub £15 million pre-money valuations. Generally sector agnostic, so our official remit is marketplaces, platforms and SaaS model businesses, B2B and B2C, which is very broad, very by design. We also have a VCT, and I will help do work for the VCT. The board for that is slightly different because it's a publicly listed company, but I will do a lot of the work for the VCT as well, and that's tickets up to, at the moment, tickets up to about 600k because of the regulatory caps on VCTs and percentage rates, but it's a brand new fund. We only launched it this year and it's done very well. Yeah, that's me.
Hi guys, I'm Ben Davies. I'm the marketing director for Praetura Ventures. We are a staunchly northern VC, but a third of our portfolio is down here, so we do still invest in London. We've got a number of different funds. We've got about 270 million under management now. 300 now actually technically. And we kind of do anything from sort of pre-seed checks of like 200k up to now about £5 million, but it just depends on where you're based, but generally sector agnostic, but specialising in tech and life sciences. We've got a portfolio of about 45 companies now. Generally, we are quite a high-touch investor, so we tend to do quite a lot of kind of post-investment support sort of stuff. Quite a few of our guys are based down here, but we're predominantly based in Manchester.
Thanks. Hi guys, Adam Barker. I'm an investor at Guinness Ventures. We are a Series A focused sector agnostic EIS and VCT investor, so we're sort of focusing on UK-based businesses, and we say kind of Series A, typically what we're looking for is a minimum of kind of £1 million of annual revenue, kind of growth rates of north of kind of 60% year on year. But we've got a portfolio of about 45 growth businesses now, but pretty broad spread across sectors and business models and all that sort of stuff. So thanks.
So the plan, guys, is we'll start off by asking each of them some questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor for any questions that you want to ask. So if you can just save your questions to the end, but yeah, please do take advantage of them being here. So to get us started, perhaps one of the more interesting questions, maybe you could all talk us through one of your more successful investments, and then perhaps one of the ones that got away that you wish you had gone for. So Ben, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks for giving me that first. I think Transreport is one of the ones that I think we're most proud of recently, actually. I don't know if any of you have ever met the founder, Jay. He does do the rounds at some of the events. The most energetic man I have ever met in my entire life. And what they've done is they've designed an app that helps people with accessibility needs get public transport far more easily. So they work with train companies to effectively tell them ahead of time that someone needs, basics like a ramp, right? Like things like that. But he's created an amazing business. He's grown really quick. I've never seen anyone be so obsessed with their team. Like every Friday, like cooks them dinner if they want it, and like no one ever leaves him because their girlfriends, wives, friends, boyfriends, whatever, don't want to leave the Friday dinner. And he's now expanding into Japan. He's just raised a Series B of 10 million from Puma. He is based here, so I'm probably not being so loyal to the north of England there, but an amazing company and just a great story. One that got away is a business called The Modern Milkman, where we actually saw them when they were first fundraising, and we went, it looks cool, we really like the founder, but it's not kind of within our remit and it feels a bit far-fetched. So they're a sustainable sort of grocery delivery business, but it's not like your sort of 10-minute grocery sort of smash and dash sort of those lot that we all remember from Sifted a few years ago. They're sort of they're basically connecting farmers, and they're not doing urban areas. They tend to do things that are outside of sort of city centres, and they've saved loads of bottles from the environment. And they got a sizable check from Insight and are now one of the fastest growing companies in Europe. So we then invested in them afterwards. So they've now joined the portfolio, but unfortunately we didn't get it the first time round. So I think that's definitely one that we regret missing first time.
Yeah, sounds like good. Oli?
Yeah, it's yeah. So on paper, currently my most successful business is a payments business. It's an account-to-account payments business called Volt, who at the moment are worth probably in the region of $500 million. We invested into their seed round, which was at a sort of a 3 million odd pre-money valuation. So we're doing all right on that on paper at this moment in time. Incredibly interesting business. Was a little bit out of remit because we invested into it slightly earlier than we would generally invest into businesses, but we just believed. And sometimes that's all you need. The founders were incredibly well connected in their sector. It really came down to a question. Payments is an arms race, and it really came down to a question of sort of like who are the right people that can knock down the right doors in order to sort of win the customer. And they were certainly that team, and that at the moment that bet's proved to be a good one. And it's one that we're very proud of, and we've got a nice collection of businesses that sit in that comfortable sort of 100 to 500 billion area that sort of are pushing towards those higher valuations now, and very happy with them. One that got away is a lot harder. I think it's really hard for VCs because I think there's this sort of confirmation bias that goes on in VCs when you're sort of like, well, we didn't really miss that many and all of that jazz. The reality is that if you don't give a business money, does it have much of an opportunity to go off and do exactly what it can do? You can sit there and pat yourself on the back and pretend that like, well, yeah, it didn't really go anywhere, so that was a good call. But if you'd given them the check, maybe they would have done. So I think you can sometimes get caught up in that bias of like, wow, aren't we amazing at making decisions? But that's not always the case. I'll go for one that's actually a smaller business. It hasn't grown into one that's like a massive business at the moment, but I've seen some of their growth. It's a business called Vasori, who are actually a Manchester-based business. I spoke to Sean early days, and I was incredibly impressed by him. I thought he was fantastic, and the business it got to a conversation between the group, and we just couldn't find conviction because the stage was a bit early when we were looking at it, and there was something in me that was just a bit I just like it, but I can understand why we didn't do it as a collective, but I think he's proved to do incredibly well from what I've seen in his latest figures. That's a very recent business, so he's still got a long way to go, but it doesn't mean we can't regret not doing it at the time. And I think that's probably the one at the moment that I wish that I'd been a part of and had been part of my portfolio over the last 12 months. Yeah, he's doing all right.
Thanks. And then I guess from my perspective, sort of best businesses we've invested in, from a returns perspective, is actually a co-investment we did with Fuel. It was a business called Content Cal, and looking at it from an IRR perspective, I think we held our investment for under 18 months. It must have been, and it sold to Adobe for a good multiple. So that was, although we didn't invest first time, we got there second time. So that was a good one, and sort of one in my portfolio that I'm super excited about is a business called Risk, which sit in the insurtech space and sort of provide kind of embedded insurance services for auto consumers. And then, I mean, there's a few that have got away over the years. Simply Cook, for example, I think we saw them the year before they sold to Nestle. Similarly with Passport, saw them the year before they sold to Moody's. But one that stands out in my mind is a business called Karma Kitchen, which at the time came to market for £3 million fundraise, and I think we put our best foot forward, but it wasn't quite as good as the £252 million check that they received from a private equity firm. So it was a mad round. But you win some, you lose some, I suppose.
And it's quite interesting hearing you talking about those investments. It seems like they're across a broad range of sectors, but currently in the current space, what are VCs targeting? Is there specific sectors that you're looking for now and you're interested in? Adam, maybe if you could take that.
Yeah, sure. So, as I said, we are sector agnostic, but, as an investment team, we have autonomy and responsibility to go out and find sectors that interest us more specifically. So we have broad coverage within the team, but for me, I tend to cover sports, insurance, and healthcare as a kind of a primary focus. Whilst I still, look across market, those are the areas that I'm kind of building more of a thesis in. I think there's a really interesting sort of cross section between all of them, where the use of kind of primary data through kind of sports technology and wearables can help inform healthcare and insurance providers. I think it's quite big in the US at the minute, but hasn't quite made its way over into Europe and the UK. So that's sort of a high level sort of thesis that I'm running at.
Likewise, we're kind of sector agnostic. I suppose we don't necessarily go after certain sectors. We obviously have specialists within the team. I think what's interesting at our stage is really what we're looking for is a reason to say yes as opposed to a reason to say no, if that makes sense. Like, as in, why is this not going on the no pile when actually there's 99.5% are going to go on the no pile? And I think that one of the things that we're trying to battle at the moment is sort of deciphering this like buzzword bingo that we see a lot on decks. And actually, it's so interesting that so many people focus on sort of big hot topics, whereas we like big lazy incumbents who work on a spreadsheet, right? Go and target, like for example, we've invested in a business called AeroCloud, who are going after airport management systems, of which still work on like Windows 95, right? Go on, lads. Like that's fantastic. Like that sort of disruption is really important. And I think that people get really hung up on sectors. And whilst there is a pile into certain areas and people, we quite quickly go, well, there's 3 HR tech businesses 30 HR tech businesses all trying to do the same thing. They're not really differentiated. What's the point of that? Like, ultimately at our stage, there's 1,001 reasons to not do it. We're looking for why here, why now, that sense of urgency, and not too much fluff around it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, so we're also a generalist fund, which maybe is completely unhelpful, but we within our team, there are certain things that we look at. As a generalist fund, there's also things that we don't look at, and I think the idea is that as a generalist, we do everything. We do a lot, but there are areas that we specifically turn around and say, it's just not for us. Medtech and biotech and pharmaceutical, not one for us. Super interesting, but we just don't have the expertise within the team. Hardware, again, not one for us. Super interesting, we just don't have the expertise within the team. Crypto, tokenization, NFT, we're not big believers personally. So, we're just not the right people to help you with that. There are plenty of people that do believe, and we're just not one of them, and that's fine. So we do sort of say, what don't we invest into? And we try and thesis ourselves around that. At the moment, some of the areas that we're seeing the most success, if I look at our portfolio across the last 2 years, we refer to them as niche software businesses. And really what they are they're B2B SaaS businesses that operate in niche ICPs, where the ICP, the customer profile, is willing to spend outlier amounts of cash. So if I take sort of the 3 of the businesses in our portfolio that have done well over the last couple of years, we've got a business called FunPath, we've got a business called Searchland, we've got a business called Hotel Manager. And they are all B2B SaaS businesses, all work in separate sectors. But the thing that unites them is that they have a really tight customer profile, which means that they can operate on really super lean sales teams. And the customer within that profile is willing to spend large amounts of money. So the ACV for that customer is very, very high compared to other sectors. And those are businesses that have grown, all 3 of those businesses have grown over 200% year on year, which in a market that's been quite tough as the last 12 months have, is quite a feat in terms of what it can do. So I think for us, doubling down into those sorts of areas, so rather than a sector, it's been sort of, we focus more around a business model, and that isn't the be all and end all. But for us, when we see a business come up that we think meets those criteria and we see those themes across those businesses, it's something that immediately gets our attention at this point in time.
And I think that's great for everyone in the room to hear, that you're not focusing on specific sectors and you are looking at anything. So to drill down on that and to help the guys that are in the audience here, what are you looking for in a founder? I mean, Ben, you spoke about taking people for dinner on a Friday night. Is that what you're looking for in every founder? And I think
It depends how much money you've raised.
I think more specifically, and I think it's one that a lot of people ask the question is, are you concerned about solo founders? Do you want to have a team of founders? How does that work?
I'm happy to answer this one. So are we concerned about sole founders? We have invested into sole founders, but we always step cautiously. We know the stats. And that's the reality. Like, we work in an odds-based industry. The odds are just not in our favour. And so we have to take that into consideration every time we make an investment. Because a founder is a solo founder, if they've built a good team around them who are equity incentivized, we can get over the fact that the person just happened to be the person that incorporated it on Companies House. You know, we are absolutely not beyond that, and we do have solo founders within the portfolio, but we also have to work on a stats game, and we know that historically that solo founders are less likely to raise money at Series A than founders with 2 or 3. Likewise, founding teams of more than 4 are also less likely to raise money at Series A. So, you know, you can't have too many cooks and all that jazz, right? So that's one example of something that we may consider when we're making an investment. It's never the driving force, but we consider a lot of things, and the statistics really have to make sure the statistics plan out, because ultimately we need outlier growth in outlier amounts of time in order to make our funds work.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. This is hard. You tend to need someone to lean on for when you're having a wobble or they're having a wobble. And to be perfectly honest, you'll find that naturally you will, having been sort of founder SLT side previously, you will find yourself naturally leaning towards certain, one will be the face, one will be the ops, and you quite quickly figure out who's going to do that. And I have seen some founders pretend like they're doing absolutely fine and they're not, they're exhausted and they've got 5-10 years in front of them. And we typically would look at co-founders, not solo.
Adam, maybe just jumping on to another question then for the guys in the audience again. What is it what gets the attention, your attention? What should a founder be doing to get your attention? Obviously, there'll be a lot of opportunities that come across your desk. So what makes a certain founder stand out?
That's a good question. I guess at the point that we're speaking to a founder, it's a real demonstration that investors talk about sort of founder market fit, but demonstration that they really understand their customer and they've lived and breathed their customers' issues and their problems, and have an empathy for the problem that they're solving. I also think that sort of giving across I guess the idea that you're sort of willing and open to sort of feedback and working collaboratively is super important. We've seen egos get in the way of good businesses in the past, and we are a low ego firm, and we like to work with low ego people that are open and willing to work together. So that's a key piece. But I guess in sort of that initial kind of get in front of VCs and get their attention, I guess it's just being short, sharp, and to the point. We see hundreds of decks each day between the team. So sort of siphoning through it, information isn't always that easy. So it's sort of researching who the people you're reaching out to are and highlighting the key points that are going to align with what they're looking for, I'd say.
To echo that point, I think ego is something that immediately is an immediate no from our point of view. One thing that I think is quite interesting is a lot of founders, and we see this more in the north of England because there's even less money up there. They go, I tried to raise money and I couldn't raise money. And we're like, how many investors do you speak to? 10. You haven't started. Like, treat it like a sales funnel, right? There's 200 who you like. Rate them from the ones you really want to the ones you don't really want, and pitch at the start. And by the time you get to the 200th, or pretend figures, but you understand what I'm trying to get to, you'll be really good at it and you will have got some feedback at that point. And I think that generally that kind of grit and resilience and this sort of almost that pull marketing strategy to attracting investment is actually something that a lot of founders overlook, and they kind of go, well, I fit these 10 mandates, I focused on them, I'll just I've targeted them and I've not quite got there. That unfortunately, this is a numbers game. The other thing that I'd say as well is a lot of people, and forgive me, but the guys have told me that roughly 60% of people haven't raised an institutional first round in here. So presuming you haven't sort of been through the IC process yet, a lot of people think that the person they're speaking to is making the decision, but actually it's that person's job to sell you internally. Now, they have no idea what you do, they're not a sector expert, and you're one of many they're working on, and they have their own commitments in their lives. Spoon feed them what you want them to say at IC. Make sure they almost can pitch it back at you and get them excited, because I guarantee you having an advocate internally throughout that process is kind of a bit of a secret weapon that a lot of people just go, well, we've got great metrics, we've given them everything we need. But if you've not got a hero internally, you'll never get anywhere. And I think that understanding what the internal process to a decision maker is really important. Start really early. Like we invested in one, for example, that was really interesting. Like spoke to one of our investment managers. Hey, this is what we do. Quick chat, nothing more. We're going to hit this in the next 6 months. They hit it in the next 6 months. LinkedIn message goes in. We've hit this. Next 6 months. We've hit this now. Another 3 months. And they said exactly what they said they were going to do in the 18 months. They did. And then they came to us and we went, do you know what? Like, we can trust what they were going to say because they said it 18 months ago and they did it. And I think that is in a sea where everyone's trying to sell you stuff. Actually, that kind of validity is really important. And then largely, the other thing as well, as I said, is problem solutions are so overlooked by people when they're so embedded in their sector. The easier you can describe it and the simpler it is, that is still, whilst it's a bit Jack and Jill and a bit basic, something that's really overlooked by most founders.
Oli, maybe just drilling down on that a little bit more. For the guys in the audience, what is it that you're looking for at that first meeting? You know, when these guys come in to speak to you for the first time, what are you expecting them to provide to you?
Yeah, so I will generally start a meeting. I'll give a little introduction to myself, and at that point, I would have seen the deck. I won't take a meeting without seeing a deck first because I need to understand from a very basic level if I think that it fits the remit of the fund that we deploy. I would have seen the deck, and I will say to the founder, present the deck to me as if I have absolutely no idea what it is that you did. And the reason that I started like that is because the founder pitch is really important. Again, VC is not necessarily about, do I like your business? It's, do I think you can sell this business to other people? I know almost for a fact that you're going to have to go out and raise more money after me. I'm a seed investor and I want unicorn exits in 5 to 7 years. You're going to have to go and raise some more money. So I need to be convinced, not only do you have an interesting business and do we like your business, but you can sell it to a Series A investor and you can sell it to a Series B investor likely. So I'll ask for the pitch and I want to see a really competent but really succinct pitch. I think in the first meeting, I generally allocate half an hour. I think it's a really efficient time use for me and for the founder. I don't want to stick the founder on an hour-long call when we're sort of in that first meeting because I imagine you're having a lot of first calls. And I want to see a really succinct pitch. I want to get through that pitch in 10 minutes. And then I want to spend the next 20 minutes talking about your business where I can ask you some questions, some core questions. I think if I think back to a lot of pitches that we've seen, I would say that one of the areas that we lose founders on is exactly what Ben's already said, which is the founder knows their sector so well that they can't really explain what they do. And if you can't layman's it, how are you going to sell it? Like in a lot of cases, it's about selling it to like people outside of the business who I think want to give you money at a later stage. But one of the areas where we've seen drop off is generally, we've come off a call and said, the founder's just not excited. Do you know what I mean? Like that was really dry. And that's really difficult. That's a really difficult sell. I also think that one of the things that as VCs we don't talk about enough is what I refer to as the meh company, which are companies, and a lot of companies fall into this bucket. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with the business. Like, it's interesting, they seem to be doing well, but they're just, like, there's nothing there that gets me up and gets me thinking, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this to my managing partner. I sit on the internal IC, but I'm going to take this to my managing partner. I'm going to tell him we should be investing into this company. you don't want to fall into that bucket, because what can happen in that bucket, in my experience, is it drags on just a little bit longer than it needs to. I'm trying to convince myself, other investors, we're trying to convince ourselves that there might be something here. And so we keep looking and we keep looking and we keep looking, and we can never get ourselves over that line. And it just takes that extra couple of days for us to turn around and say, it's not going to be one for us. You either want a quick no or a quick yes. That's what you want, because either you can move on with your life or you can move on with us. And that's obviously what you want to get out of the meeting, and that's what I want to get out of the meeting too.
Sounds good. Perfect. Ben, I'd quite like to start with you on this one, because I know Praetura are big on this, but just to flip this whole discussion on its head, what should the guys in the audience be expecting from you as a VC? What do you provide them with? Obviously, there's money there, but what is it apart from the money that you offer them?
Yeah, so I think we were having this conversation beforehand, right? Like, being a founder in the last 3 years, for the ones who make it, you lot are going to be bloody bulletproof, to be perfectly honest, because it has been hard, man. Like, you have had economic turbulence, you've had a funding drought, you've had all manner of crazy shit thrown at you. From my point of view, the more you can lean on, and this is what the guys here are doing, right, at Howard Kennedy, like, they're trying to do stuff to help you in your business beyond the general service. Be cheeky by who around you can help you hit your goals. From my point of view, an investor you should treat, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but you should treat them like a partner. Like, can you WhatsApp them at 9 o'clock and go, something's gone tits? Do you know what I mean? Like, can you do that? Like, have you got that kind of relationship where you know that if something's gone really bad, they will roll up their sleeves and go, right, we're going to give you a hand to try and help with this because it's important. So I think we have things like a program where we match operational partners who are, industry heavyweights who kind of impartially give people advice. We have a portfolio toolkit which organises loads of discounts. We do portfolio festivals. We do PR with them. We do joint content with them. Like, ultimately, like, I think the thing, and lots of other people do that, right? Like, we collaborate with lots of VCs and other investors who share a similar approach to how we see stuff. There are certain people we also won't invest in because we don't think they do that. I would encourage you to look at their portfolio. Don't look at their case studies. Go and find one that failed, right? Go and find one that they've swept under the rug and ask them how they really were, because then you'll get a true look at, how is this marriage going to pan out in 5 to 7 years' time when we part ways, and were they a pain in the arse or not? Like, that's really important, because actually it's really easy for all of us to sit here and go, well, it was a roaring success. We helped. Like, actually, the reality of it is you need to look at lots of different scenarios and who's actually practicing what they preach, because I guarantee if there's 3 of them and they've got a portfolio of 100 businesses, unless they've got a structure in place, how do you think they're supporting their portfolio? So there's a term sheet, we'll all try and win you, we'll promise you the moon and stars, but like, just try and, it's hard when someone offers you money, but I guarantee getting bad money out of a business is so much more difficult than getting bad money in, effectively.
Adam, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I suppose difficult one to follow, but Guinness aren't we don't set out our stall as strategic investors by any means. We're sort of, specialists in the stage we're focusing on. So we focus on professionalization in businesses and helping kind of set the foundations for growth, deploying capital into sustainable operations, to form growth, also setting businesses up in the best way possible to get the Series B or next event, in effect. We see that as our jobs, going from getting a business from Series A to Series B, whether that's getting the right people in place, whether that's around the board or on the exec team, putting the proper reporting and governance in place, getting KPIs in place, because these are all things that a Series B investor or an acquirer is going to be looking to see track record around. So that's kind of the area that we tend to specialize in as investors.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, guys. That was incredibly interesting, and I'd love to keep on asking you questions, but I feel like we should offer it out to the floor. So if you do have a question, then please feel free to raise your hand.
Any questions? Okay. We start here.
If you can let us know who your question's directed to as well, and I'll pass the mic.
Really, anyone who wants to take it. So basically, I've been working for an AI startup for the last year, helping anyone automate tedious, repetitive work. One thing that is very apparent when you get to real users is a chat interface for LLM technology is horrible for normal users because it's like a blank sheet of paper. Every time you want to do something, you're supposed to write it out in chat. It feels insane. So the question I wanted to ask is, what are the most interesting non-chat interfaces you guys might have seen in founders coming to you to use LLM on the back end? So where they've actually designed something rather than just being like, talk to Claude or ChatGPT or whatever.
Who wants to take that one?
Right. Okay, I'll start. I'm not a specialist in this space, so forgive me, but I think for us, so first, let me lay out Fuel's position on AI because I think it's a really important point, right? So we are a seed investor. Our ability to rate AI at a seed stage is very limited. I can't come, and what we're finding in the market is that AI is premium in terms of valuations. Now, what I can't do is I can't come into your business, rip apart your tech stack and decide that it's legitimate AI and that it's worth the money that I'm going to have to pay for it. So what we tend to do instead is we are much more focused as a fund on established businesses, or what we would call healthy businesses without the AI component, who use off-the-shelf AI in order to improve a core part of their offering or to improve their gross margins. I am not bothered. I am really not interested in investing into LLMs. I am much more interested in investing into a marketplace that uses AI to cut half of its customer sales reps. And that AI is probably going to be off the shelf. It's going to be well funded, and it is probably going to be some kind of chat interface. So I'm probably not the best person to ask, but I actually think that my position is a relatively common position in the space. And I think that I genuinely believe that AI, and again, it feels a little bit cliche. I think it's probably been said quite a lot before. I think the AI space in general has the propensity to waste a lot of investor money. It's my genuine belief because it's almost dangerous. Like it's because there is no investor here. I'm speaking for the other investors here, but I feel confident in doing so. There's no investor here or any investor that I've spoken to who doesn't believe in the potential impact of AI on all core industries that they would generally invest into. Very different from what we saw from the crypto market in 2016 and 17, which is there was a large long tail of investors, myself included, who just didn't really believe in it and therefore put no investor dollars towards it. And so actually you were always relatively limited. There were some funds that were going to lose everything and a lot of funds that were going to lose nothing or only a little bit. Whereas AI now is like, it's always interesting to look at. So yeah, I know it's not necessarily an answer to your question, but I hope it gives you an idea. There are some very good artificial intelligence investors out there. I'm not necessarily one of them.
I don't necessarily think we can add much to that, to be perfectly honest. I think our position is quite similar, to be perfectly honest. And I think that we likewise, when someone goes, I need a lot of money to train this LLM, we go, oh, I'm not sure about that. Because we're just not at that level of the market, right? I think we're better at going, I found this specific problem that I am trying to solve through this function, and this is why it suits it, and not doing that thing that we've all discussed before this, where people think we like hearing about AI, so they wrap a wrapper around it and go, we're an AI startup now, not focusing on the fact it's actually a technology.
Yeah, I'd echo those 2 points. There are specialist funds out there that will snap up the most promising early stage, LLM tech heavy businesses that we don't necessarily see as, generalist investors, much more comfortable with, off the shelf stuff, optimizing existing systems.
Okay, we got one question here.
So, I mean, the UK has quite a few amazing universities, London as well. So, do you folks invest in university spin-outs, and just would love to generally get your view on how you think about university spin-offs from an investment standpoint?
I suppose we've invested in some companies. So Abrism, for example, was I suppose a university spin out. It's a sort of learning tech, ed tech business, who's 3 sort of PhDs from Cambridge created. It is quite, it is leveraging AI to create sort of linear learning pathways. Sorry, not linear, dynamic learning pathways versus linear. We don't have a specific kind of thesis around university spin-outs. I know that some funds do. For example, I think Parkwalk are a big kind of university spin-out business. There's a few kind of old college capital focusing Edinburgh university-based spin-out. So I think there are specialist funds out there, but we're not necessarily one of them.
I think you're going to start to see more universities taking an active role in funding their own spin-outs, as in like creating separate funds and entities that are managed separately. For example, Northern Gritstone was something that we didn't think we were going to see for quite some years, but I guarantee that's going to start happening in different parts of the world, different parts of the UK, sorry, that have started to figure out that, actually, if we cornerstone it, maybe, we can, and that's how they'll remain competitive. In terms of university spin-outs, we funded quite a lot of them. We tend to look for... I'll caveat this actually. The thing that makes us run a mile is when we find academics who just want to do their academic work. What we really struggle with sometimes is you get some really bright people who've clearly found a problem, but commercially they've just got no bite to them. And they're like, we solved the problem. I'm like, so what? So is everyone else. So that can be a real sticking point, I think, for a lot of university spin-outs, is we just don't necessarily see the commercial chops in it to be able to scale it to the sized returns that we want to see.
I agree with both those points. Fuel's position's more similar to Guinness in terms of like our history than it is to Praetura, but I agree with both those points.
Okay, great. We have time for one last question here.
Hi, 2 questions. You all mentioned about healthcare. Well, I'm going to go for it. 2 questions. First question is, you all mentioned about healthcare, but you never mentioned any company you invested in and why. Second question is, healthcare adoption takes time. So what's the difference from your perspective in valuation from a company that's healthcare and non-healthcare in ratio to their seed funding raise?
Yeah.
So we do invest in healthcare. The reason why we haven't said healthcare is because it's just got less consumer curb appeal, right? So, for example, we have invested in a business that keeps organs alive for an additional 12 hours, and loads of people die from organ transplants through this special system called persiflation that effectively is like... They're called Scuba TX, but they've effectively created a box that we jokingly called Deliver Liver, which helps basically people take livers much further away and people die less. Brilliant. It's just got less consumer appeal because people at things like this tend to be a bit more tech focused. The thing that I'd say about health generally is you'll find a lot of investment managers who don't understand your world glaze over a little bit when you're trying to explain the opportunity, and sometimes there's just a disconnect by you being able to explain how that works. We also have another problem where a lot of the time the end of the debt goes and then we'll sell it to the NHS. Have you ever sold it to the NHS before? That's actually dead hard. And actually your sales strategy for the NHS is actually sometimes more important than the problem and the solution that you've got, because actually your ability to knock down those doors is really difficult. The other thing that I'd say as well is generally EIS investors, and definitely to a point SEIS investors as well, like they do expect a return fairly quickly, whereas the holding period for a healthcare business tends to be, not 5 to 7, it tends to be 8 to 10. So what you tend to find is you'll find people sort of ushering towards health businesses or ushering sort of closer to tech. And I think that it's about understanding what people's actual appetite for one or the other is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let me add to that as one of the people whose eyes glaze over when you talk about it. it's a qualification issue, and the thing that scares investors like us when it comes to anything health tech, and I'll loop pharmaceutical into that because it carries a lot of the same problems, and actually probably to an even greater extent. The turnover cycles are very hard, the cash requirements are very high, and to put it bluntly, talking about curb appeal, that also goes to investors as well. We have to raise money as well. Like, our customers are you guys, startups, but also the investors. And when we go to the investors, we have to say to the investor, here's what we've invested into, and this is what they've done over the last 12 months. If I can show a business that's gone from 500,000 of ARR to 3 million of ARR, that is much more tangible to a generalist investor who might invest in my fund than, for example, a health tech startup or a pharmaceutical startup that might have passed phase 2 trials of because that's a very complex and a very industry standard term that the generalist doesn't understand. And I have to raise more money, because I've got to back some more great startups and I've got to generate more return for my investors. And that, I think that comes under curb appeal as well.
Yeah, just to reiterate that's such a good point that I should definitely include. Like, we invested in an allergy biotech startup, right, that's trying to solve some allergen testing problems in North Wales. Like, that was hard work for a number of years, because these benchmarks that they were hitting that were a big deal in there, they're now like one of our most successful portfolio companies, but these benchmarks they were telling us they were hitting, we were like, so you can do peanuts and you can do fish now? What do you mean? Like, we can't fund you anymore. Like, and I think that those benchmarks, when we understood the scale of the problem they were trying to sell and all this other stuff, now it's great because we've got revenue coming in. But like, being able to punctuate what the benchmark means at different times so that someone can report back no revenue, but that, I think, can be really difficult with generalist investors.
Yeah, I think it's slightly different from us, and we've got healthcare in the portfolio both from a consumer healthcare perspective, but also a sort of public sector focused sort of healthcare businesses. But we're investing at the point at which traction is demonstrated, and businesses have a foothold in the NHS with XYZ Trust, a part of frameworks selling into the NHS, and I suppose this is when we really look to the founding teams. Whilst we as investors don't have backgrounds in that space, we'd expect a founder in that space to have a background in the healthcare service and know what the procurement systems look like and know how to sell into them, or at least if they don't, they need someone senior on their sales team who sort of has lived and breathed that, which is sort of how we look at it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much to that panel. There's some amazing insights there. Can we all give the panel a big round of applause? We'll try and accelerate this bit because the pizzas have arrived and we don't want to take any more of your time. So we just wanted to flag a few events that are coming up. So on the 10th of September, we have a pitch training session. It's all on virtual. These will be emailed out to you all after the event. Our next event, we've got some really great speakers. So it's an exited founder. He had a 9-figure exit, and we're just listening to what that journey looked like and how he achieved it. So that is, if you're free to join us, it's on the 26th of September over at Holborn. And second last thing is we've got a discount code for our community. If anyone is around from the 9th until the 13th of September, the Cambridge Tech Week is taking place. So there'll be some amazing companies up there, and you can use the code on screen if it's of any interest. Gabriel's just going to update us as well on an upcoming event for later stage founders.
Yeah, absolutely. So one more community announcement is we are hosting a very small but very focused dinner with our sponsors, partners from AirWallex. But this is this is exclusively for our community, especially if you are in later stage, Series A, Series B, plus, and VCs as well. You're welcome as well. So basically, if you kind of fit in that category, because there's very limited spots, we have a form to submit, and then we will notify whoever we're able to bring into the group. And this is one of the initiatives we like to kind of try and experiment with, where we do also some kind of ad hoc, smaller kind of events like that. So if you fit the category, just come to me, and I'll tell you where to go for that. There we go.
Thanks, and that's us. Yeah, pizzas are at the back, drinks are there as well, and just a reminder that we're going across to the Barrow Boy and Banker just opposite across the road afterwards at around 9 o'clock. Thanks very much.